I'm in the streets, so they say these like, big deal, great shows like, make it this, make it that like, don't lie, you know how I sound like. I'm in the streets, so they say these like, big deal, great shows like, make it this, make it that like,
Cubans in Florida are shocked that they're being deported by record-breaking numbers. And I gotta tell y'all, I'm shocked that they're shocked. Trump was completely transparent. There was no fine print with this agreement. Two things about that guy. He's going to tell you what he's going to do. And those things that he told you that he was going to do that he can't do is simply because he just don't have the power. And he overestimated himself to carry, to follow through with those things. But, fortunately, with the deportation, with deporting people, he can deport undocumented immigrants and he could end TPS status like he did for the Cubans. And he could put travel bans on countries like he did for the Cubans. Those 19 countries that he recently banned, Cuba was part of it. And in 2025, he deported 1,600 Cubans, which was double the amount of the deportations back in 2024, right? They have pictures of the Cubans outside this, in this detention center outside of Alligator Alcatraz. They have pictures of them back in June lining up together, spelling out SOS Cuba. SOS Cuba. That's what they're spelling out on their shirts or paint on themselves in these facilities. They have pictures of that. So the Cubans are just shocked because these are record-breaking numbers. Nobody deported these many Cubans in the last 3 administrations. And polls show that 7 out of 10 Cubans support Donald Trump. 7 out of 10 Cubans support Donald Trump. The beautiful thing, one of the most beautifulest things about this beautiful country is that you have freedom of choice. And people should respect that. So yeah, this is still, I don't care what nobody say, this is still a banger on my playlist.
I will vote for Donald Trump. I will vote.
Raise your hands, come on.
For Donald Trump. Dale cintura, 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 cintura. I will vote for Donald Trump.
Supporting Trump when more and more Cubans are getting deported? Okay, that's a question that I hear getting tossed around on here a lot, and let me unpack this for you a little bit. The first waves of Cubans, the OG Cubans who came, they came in the 1960s and they were trying to escape communism, right? Because they felt like their property, their wealth, all that shit was getting taken by the government. The people in Cuba who had property and wealth to be taken were the white presenting Cubans, the ones that looked more like me. They were more white presenting because there was fuck ton of racism, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. There was a fuck ton of racism in Cuba at that time. I mean, there still is. And so they came here and they were like, we can never go back. We've lost everything, all right? And they were perfectly happy and perfectly content until 1980. And in 1980, what happened is that Castro allowed Cubans to leave through the port of Mariel. Right, so there was the Mariel boat lift. So people from Miami were going to go get relatives. Charter boats would go out and pick up Cubans. And one of the things also that Castro did at that time is that he opened up prisons and he opened up mental institutions. And there were a lot of queer people in those spaces because queer people were criminalized in Cuba. They were in jail. If you were queer, if you were trans, you were in jail in Cuba. And so he was releasing all these people. And he was also releasing people with like mental health disorders who were in mental hospitals and things like that, right? And so the Cubans in Miami saw that. That wave that was coming was also people that were more brown and black. That's where the people that were coming in the Mariel were more brown and black and they were more poor. And those OG Cubans are racist as fuck and they're classist as fuck. Yeah? That's my family. My family were the OG Cubans. And I was raised with this, so I'm telling you from the inside. I was raised to look at the people that were coming during the Mariel who were browner, who were blacker, who were queer. I was taught that they were scum. And the Cubans that were already here wouldn't give them jobs, wouldn't allow them to rent little apartments or spaces or whatever. No, they refused them. They didn't want to absorb them into the culture here. And so where did those people go? Some of them were able to find places to live in historically black neighborhoods in Miami, like Liberty City and Overtown and Alapata, right? Because again, the Cubans were like, dark-skinned Cubans, we don't want them here. Poor Cubans, we don't want them here, right? But other marginalized groups in the United States were okay. We're like, yeah, come. A lot of them also ended up in other states because the United States was like, well, you can't, there's no jobs for you in Miami, so we're going to send you somewhere else for work. And this fucking like bigotry towards your own people, that continued through the decades. It continued through the balseros that came, the people that came on rafts in the late 1990s and the early 2000s. And so this OG group of Cubans truly believed that they were the best Cubans because they were the white Cubans, because they were the Cubans with money. They believed that they were the best Cubans, and that they believed that they were the only Cubans who really had a right to be here because they were going back to Cuba. And all these newer Cubans wanted to go back to Cuba to visit relatives and friends. Like, of course they want to go visit their relatives and friends. Of course they miss them. And if it's possible for them to do that, they would. And then it became possible for them to do that. And so that spurred even more hatred and vitriol to those groups. I was raised to believe these things. I was raised to believe that I was a better Cuban and that all these other Cubans needed to go back. Like, it's so bad that the term Marielito of the people that came in the 1980s during the Mariel boat lift, Marielito was tossed around as a slur, as a derogatory term. Like when Cubans would see like someone like running a red light or, you know, whatever, or cursing out loud in public, they'd be like, "Ugh, that's a Marielito," right? Like some disgusting rat or something like that. Okay, so those OG Cubans taught their kids and their grandkids and their great-grandkids to think that way. And that's why there are so many Cubans who are perfectly happy watching other Cubans getting deported. Because for decades they have been waiting for this moment. For decades. And I guarantee you that the Cubans who came in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, even the most recent ones, I guarantee that they don't even really fully realize how much the OG Cubans and their descendants hate them. I don't think they realize it. I think that they believe like, oh, we're all comrades. We vote Republican together. We all have the same value system. And it's like, no, honey. You've been out white supremacistized. You've been out fucking Cubanized by your own community. You've been duped. You've been fucking duped. And they've been waiting for decades to get rid of you. And that's why they're still supporting Trump. They're happy about that. They want Cubans to get deported. They want that. And that's where Marco Rubio comes from, right? He was raised the same way that I was. He was brainwashed into believing that his own people were trash and that they needed to go. And now he's making that happen.
Rubio talking about immigration and throwing his own Cuban people under the bus. Listen to this.
On the Cuban one, because I know that one well. So if you come from Cuba, you are presumed to be for fleeing political persecution. So you automatically are eligible for refugee cash. You're eligible for food stamps. You're eligible for Medicare, Medicaid. Others who immigrate to the country have to wait 5 years for those and don't get the refugee cash. But within a year, depending if you're paroled, you can apply for a green card. And then you can travel back to Cuba as often as you want. Multiple times. You can take cash. You can buy stuff with the food stamps. I've seen it. Okay, this is not, I didn't read this in a magazine. I've seen it. They use the food stamps, they fill up these bags, and they take it back to Cuba over there. Or they just transfer cash back. Some people go back to Cuba for 3 months at a time. They've been here a year. How, if you are fleeing persecution, how can it be that a year later you are spending summers in Cuba? How can it be that less than a year later you're traveling back 6, 8 times a year to Cuba? I've never heard of people fleeing persecution going back to a place repeatedly. There's an issue here.
Look, I get it. It's easy to hate on Cubans because as soon as they get to the U.S., they become all Republican like this guy. But they are escaping conditions that were created by the United States. And the reason why Cubans got a lot of special treatments in the immigration system isn't because the United States loved Cubans. The United States just hated communism and were using the Cuban people as pawns. And now, because communism is not a major threat, a lot of the Cuban perks are being taken away. Like, you know, the whole wet foot, dry foot policy? Yeah, once that was taken away in 2016, deportations of Cubans skyrocketed. And a lot of them are being told to remain in Mexico. So instead of making it easier for other immigrants, Marco Rubio is like, hey, look at the Cubans and any kind of perks they have left, we should take it away from them. He's like, how can anybody be from Cuba and say that they're being persecuted and they're having a rough life when they come here, then they go right back to Cuba? That's because Cubans who live in Cuba, unlike you, Marco, understand that there are two economies. There are those who live in Cuba, okay, and make pesos. They have a very rough life. They can't get ahead. But those who have US dollars live a much better life. So yes, people are escaping persecution created by the United States. Then they get here, then they get a little more money, and they're able to go back home under different conditions. Also, it's not a crime once you get a green card to go back home. So anybody who gets a green card cannot go back home or else it's shady. This is a Cuban doing the white man's work, going like, hey, look at my own people. They're liars, man. They're coming over here saying that they need help, but they don't. Then they go back home. Don't worry about all the historical context that I'm missing here. I know it's easy to hate on Cubans, but if y'all go with his logic and go, hey, listen, these Cubans are lying about seeking asylum, then that gets rolled over to all immigrants. Now they're all lying about seeking asylum. Look how quick they go back home after they're able to get their papers. And to any Cuban seeing this, isn't it crazy how they're turning on you? Look at that. Now that they don't need you anymore.
So what ICE does, and Border Patrol is incredible, too. I mean, Paul Perez and that group is incredible. Mostly Hispanic, by the way. They're like 60% Hispanic. You know, they talk about Hispanic. They're mostly Hispanic, right? And they're unbelievable people. And then they say, oh, we discriminate against. I love Hispanic. They are unbelievable, entrepreneurial. They have everything. I did great. I did the highest. Nobody ever got numbers like I got from the standpoint of being a Republican. But even if you look at Texas, I won the entire border along Texas, between Texas and Mexico. It never happened before. Nobody's ever done that before. I did it as a Republican. I did it. I love the Hispanic. And they accuse us of all sorts of things. 60% of the people we're talking about, they're the best people we have, and they're Hispanic. The Border Patrol is largely Hispanic. ICE is largely Hispanic. They're unbelievable people.
So let's get this straight. Just a few days ago, DJT came out on the internet and said that the people that are on the front line, that are ICE agents, majority of them are immigrants. Not that. They are immigrants.
And I said, why is Mexico deporting Cubanos? And I'm like, and there seems to be a lot of animosity between Cubans and Mexicans on apps, social media. And I'm like, let me go do some research. And come to find, they have deported over 20,000 people, 20,000 Cubans out of Mexico. And you know what the reasoning is? They're an economical drain. They want to live off the government. They can be pretty loud and violent too. This is what's coming from the article. And it makes me ask the question, why are so many Mexicans pissed off here that they're being deported, but they do the same thing in Mexico? The people that are economically draining their country, they just throw them out of their country. Essentially the same is being done here in America. If you're an economical drain on the country, that's come to an end. We're no longer the welfare country. And it's not going to go back. There's a lot of people.
Latinos, doesn't matter where you are, Mexico, Cubanos, Argentina, everything, any kind of Latino you can possibly think of, always have thought that the lighter skin you are, the closest to proximity of white that you can be. And the unfortunate part is most Cubans are light-skinned, so they always think that they get a free fucking pass because they're somehow light-skinned enough, but they're never white-skinned enough. And not to mention that Cuba was a fucking dictatorship country, so it makes perfect sense that they want some fascist leader to go ahead and run the country. And not to mention they were colonized by Spain, and they have colorism like a motherfucker. And the internalized racism that they have, because Afro-Cubanos will literally say that they are white without like hesitating at all. I mean, I lived in New York for a very long time, and the Cubanos who think that they're literally white are fascinating to me because they literally feel as if they are the exception to the rule, but yet they do not know that obviously they were enslaved by Spain, and that they're not only Latino, but most of them are Afro-Cubanos or Afro-Latinos. So, like, it's just fucking wild. That's why.
Trump just ordered the deportation of 500,000 Cuban, Venezuelan, and Haitian immigrants that came here the right way. And my question for my fellow Cubans is, are y'all still feeling special? My entire childhood was spent being fed the narrative that our family came here the right way, and that everybody else that's complaining about being deported, well, they just need to go back to where they came from, start the process over legally. I don't want to ever hear another Cuban American say some shit like that ever again. I'm gonna laugh in your face. Maybe you all will finally realize that no matter how much you try to blend into white Western European culture, no matter how much you try to pretend that you don't eat ham croquettes for breakfast and that you've never had ajiaco for dinner in your entire life, the problem is that Donald Trump is never going to see you as human. It's always been about racism. Here's the part that we like to talk about in our homes when no one else is listening, but I'm going to go ahead and say the quiet part out loud. You all think that you are better than every other type of Latino American. Conservative Cuban Americans, MAGA Cuban Americans, think that you are better than every other flavor of Latino American. And now we have proof. You are no different. We are no better than anybody else. No matter how many times you place your vote for Donald Trump and the Republican Party, they are still going to see you as subhuman. And even if you hang your hat on the fact that you came here the right way, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter to him.